circles here, where voices thrive. Turn on your screens, let the magic unfold. Listening and healing as stories are told. Come on, come on, this is your time. No topics too tough, just heed the calls. From mental health woes to justice we seek. Together we rise for the strong and the meek. A safe space for all, let's lift every voice. In a circle podcast where hearts unite, sharing our truths, bringing hope to the light. Community strong, we're never alone. Together as one, we've created a home. With laughter and love, we break down the walls. No topics too tough, just heed the calls. From mental health woes to justice we seek. Together.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Inner Circle podcast, where we amplify, empower, and elevate immigrant voices. Tonight, we shine the spotlight on one of the most important agencies shaping Minnesota economic future, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED. We are honored to be joined by Assistant Commissioner Abdiwahab Mohamed, who leads the Office of New Americans. Mr. Mohamed, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David. This is amazing, and it's an honor.
Okay, thank you. And folks, you can form part of this conversation by calling our number 817-600-1525, or you can put a comment in the chat. And you can also, Inner Circle Podcast, we are growing. You can follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join this movement. We encourage you. We are everywhere where you get your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, LinkedIn, everywhere. So join us. Commissioner Mohamed, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, and how you started with DEED?
Thank you so much. This is amazing. It was about 8.5 years ago that I came to work for the Department of Employment and Economic Development, in short, DEED. And all throughout the podcast, we'll be referring to DEED, but it is Department of Employment and Economic Development. By then, I was a new immigrant into the state.
Okay.
I've only been there for about less than 5 years when I first started working for DEED. I started working as a grant specialist. Working mostly with the cities and the counties and some of our grantees then, working on something we call the WIO Adult Programs, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, mostly helping folks that have been laid off due to no fault of their own to either get an upskilling or get back to the job. And that was one of the things that led me to DEED. It is something that I realized was very helpful, especially to new Americans into the state. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes. That was something that was really helping folks that are still navigating the system. And that's one of the main reasons why I joined DEED. At that time, there was no Office of New Americans. There was no such an office dedicated to the New Americans. And so I did my part, what I could do, and I moved on from there to the trade office. DEED has, in general, just a bit of a background about DEED is that the economic development side of programs, and then there's the workforce development side of programs. And then, of course, you have the workforce systems that support both. And then, of course, the ops and admin, and, of course, all the other amazing work that's did. But those are the two mostly front-facing programs that you hear a lot. The economic development program mostly deals with, as the word goes, economic development, but entrepreneurship, small businesses, larger grants or loans to businesses. And of course, workforce development serves primarily in training the workforce for the future. So if you may look at it is, you have programs that support the businesses, attract the businesses, help the businesses grow. And then the other side of it, make sure that there is the ready workforce that is to work at those businesses that we serve. So it goes hand in hand.
Okay.
And so I moved to the economic development side of things, where I worked for the trade office. I was the regional trade manager for Africa, Middle East, and India at that time. I had worked with a lot of folks that were looking into exporting back home as an immigrant across the world. And we did amazing work with the Minnesota businesses that were also trying to explore new markets overseas. And so about 6.5 years at the trade office, these few changes happened, and we had an opening at the Office of New Americans, and I was asked to lead this office. At that time, we did not have the office established through state statute. It was through executive order, and but after I joined the office, we were lucky enough to have the folks brought together a lot of the discussions, the right political environment, and all those factors combined. We were lucky enough to have the office established in state statute 2023. So July 2023 is when the office officially started this office. So that's the journey that I took from coming here. But there's a lot of other stories about.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, thanks for laying that out. But why do you think D is so vital to the Minnesota economy? To Minnesota. Why is D so vital to Minnesota? And do you think, new immigrants or even immigrants that have been here enough, do they really know the work that D is doing? So the first question is, why do you think D is so vital to Minnesota and to the Minnesota economy? And do you think new immigrants are aware of the good work D is doing?
Thank you. Those are two great questions. Starting with the why is DEED or vital to the economy. First is the primary economic development agency. We have about, I think, 17 state agencies, and DEED is the economic development agency. And I say, whether it's working with the businesses or attracting businesses to the state and helping businesses find more markets and attracting new businesses to the state, as well as getting the individual ready. So it's the agency that serves the entities, the businesses, and the individual. And both of them, of course, you've seen this mission is economic development for all. For all Minnesotans. And we believe that when the individual is working, they're contributing to the society, to the economic development. When businesses are successful, they are contributing to the economic development. And so that's why there are so many programs that are vital to folks that are coming into the country, moving into Minnesota, for to support their families, but also to chase the American dream. That you either do that through working, leveraging your skills and getting to the top, or if you are an entrepreneur starting businesses, getting loans, getting the resources you need to be successful. So in every aspect of your economic development journey, becoming what you want to do in the future, DEED is there to support. For example, let's identify a person who immigrated, two people who immigrated to the state. One brings in a skill, they have a skill. They, for example, either do not have the certificate for that skill, or they do have the certificate but need to be matched. So they will go to a CareerForce location, and they will work with an employment counselor. That's a DEED program, whether it's the state employment counselors or whether it's the DEED partners. And the workforce system is large. And they would work with an employment counselor. They will know which industries are trending, where they need upskilling. Do they need do credit evaluation and credentialing, which we can talk about later.
Yeah.
And then they will know Deed releases the job market numbers, which industries had the highest opening, which industries has in-demand jobs, and which industries do pay the most. There's all this data out there, and then
Yeah.
there's an amazing system for career one-stop solutions that Minnesota is leading the nation on those websites, where you can
Okay.
find trainings, how to prepare for interviews, how to be successful candidate, how to write a resume, all that. So that person has all this network of resources available for them. The other person who comes in, they have a entrepreneurship skill that they want to develop into a big business.
Yeah.
And so they meet with the SBDCs or the SBDA teams. And once they have the business deal registered in the state, they have all their forms, everything complete. They have opened their accounts, and now they're going to the let's say CDFIs, community development finance institutions, to get a loan. They can get a loan if the CDFIs are happy with their business plan.
Yeah.
They can get some funding, and of course start their business, and then get all the resources for their business to be successful.
Okay.
And of course work with our partners. And so whichever track you choose,
Sure.
Deed has resources for you from the start to the end. And so that's what makes them vital to the new Americans specifically, but also to every Minnesotan that lives in the state.
Okay. Man, I mean, it seems to be a very, very important agency, right, for everything you have described and things like that. And thanks for providing that information. I know you mentioned about the mission, right? It says like for everyone. How is that practice ID, right? It's like, the mission is to empower the growth of Minnesota economy for everyone. In practice, what does that look like, from your vantage point?
You said the impact?
No, in practice, right? It's like, okay,
In
it's like,
practice, yes.
yeah, I mean, in practice, what does that look like? It's like, hey, right, trying to empower, the growth of Minnesota economy for everyone, right? What does that look like? How does that look like for me as a Minnesotan, right, as an immigrant? What does that look like, for the new, for the new college graduate, right? Someone graduating from college, this, who just graduated, right? What does that look like for them?
Yes. So a couple of things. There's so many Deed programs that are focusing on every individual at every individual level. As I said, if you go back to that example of the person who either wants to become an employee, use their skill, or the entrepreneur, we have an amazing network of partners from every corner. We have Greater Minnesota. We have folks that are in the rural, in the metro area. We have folks that are, when I say folks, I mean partners. We have partners that are, women-led. We have partners that are veterans. We have partners that are new Americans led, and we have a lot of the partners that are, representative of the folks that we serve in the state. So one is, Minnesota Economic Development for All means you get the funding and the RFP process, which encompasses all the cross sections of the society. That's one. So starting from our contracting process, that's inclusive, and also we have specific fundings that we get from the legislator every year that are earmarked for certain programs. Whether we have, women economic security grants, whether we have, ethnic groups funds, whether we have, funds for the veterans, whether we have funds for the youth, whether we have funds for, capacity building for stay-at-home moms, whether we have funding for, folks that are they have been formally incarcerated or justice involved, and that are getting back into the workforce. We also have funding for some of the programs that are for the folks that are retired and are rejoining back the workforce. So there's so many amazing funding that we get from the legislator, state legislator, every year that we put out through the same partners that are all inclusive and send it that way. So that's one there's great ways we make sure that we are practically giving resources to those who can serve best.
Okay.
Some
No, okay. Well, folks, tonight we are shining the spotlight on the Minnesota, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and we have the Assistant Commissioner of New Americans. He's here with us tonight, Abdiwahab Mohamed. So thank you so much for joining us. You can contribute to the conversation. If you have a question for the commissioner, you can call our number 817-600-1525, or you can put a comment in the chat. But I know you are the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of New Americans, ONA. What does ONA do, and how did ONA come about?
Thank you. So the ONA Office of New Americans, as the name says, primarily serves all New Americans into the state, regardless of ethnic background, religious, all the sections of the society. We do believe that New Americans face enormous challenges, some that are unique to the immigrant or the refugee. For example, language access is not something that a native-born person will have, or that's not a barrier that someone who was born here has, or evaluating your credentials from overseas. And so those are some of the unique barriers that with additional lack of familiarity, lack of network, general lack of resources. And so that's what led to having an Office of New Americans specifically serving to eliminate or address the barriers that this section of the society faces. And so that's the general idea. And of course, there's a lot of research, a lot of data that shows that New Americans are an integral part of the state. They're not an insignificant number that could be, just, ignored. For example, we might go into the data later, but over the past decade, 50% of the workforce growth was led by immigrants. And so that's a huge statistic. So some of those data is what shows, we need to focus on this section of the society. And of course, our mission again is to empower economic development for all. So that means having such an office, directly contributes to that mission. So that's general idea of how ONA came about. I mentioned, the executive order, and then after that, having a funding specifically earmarked for this office after the 2023 legislative session. Since then, the office has done a lot of work. I don't know if that was part of the question, but I can go into the details.
Yeah, go into that. I mean, I want to know what kind of work the office is doing. How is the office reaching the immigrant community? Because it's my first time hearing about. Obviously, it's my first time hearing about it. I'll call myself a lifelong Minnesotan, right? But this is my first time hearing about the office of ONA. So, how is ONA reaching out to the immigrant community and to New Americans?
Yes. So what we've started, the office started back in 2020, when we were right at the middle of the COVID. Former Assistant Commissioner Anissa Haji Mumin was leading the office at that time. So you can imagine the folks that have language access issue, limited English, and all the vital information that was coming out from the Minnesota Department of Health, from the governor's office about safety, COVID regulations, and all that. So at that time, the office was focusing on the emergency at hand, getting communities the resources that they needed, translating those information, working with community organizations that are primarily serving New Americans. And so after that, the office was focusing on mostly, creating the networks convening the organizations, doing the opening doors for those that are looking for jobs. We have we've done job fairs at that time, done a lot of work with employers and matching the employers who were seeking new employees and new Americans who were seeking jobs. That was one vital resource that was needed. There was a few sessions that happened to train employers on, retaining and attracting new Americans into the workforce. There was, training sessions that have been done for the employers, which contributed to some successes. We've dealt with issues like, registering your business with the Secretary of State, and such information was released in multiple languages. And so that was what the office primarily worked at that time. A lot of convening and connecting. There were so many organizations that are working at a silo. Like, for example, you have been hosting this podcast for this long, and you reached out just the other day. And so sometimes there's so many individuals that are serving the community at different levels, and that need to be brought together so we can work to address the challenges that we have. So the office's key role is playing that convener, connector. And so since then, after 2023, which is the second phase of the office, we've decided to come up with certain important issues that the community faces and how to address those challenges. So language access was one of it. Credential and credit evaluation was the other aspect of it. And then, of course, legal services was the other issue. A lot of folks face legal challenges. And then the other was more internally of just convening the state agencies. We have an interagency convening power. So those are the four issues that we've been tackling. So going into details on what we have done on each. For example, for the legal services, we have had a great partnership with the Department of Human Services, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR, where there was funding that was earmarked for legal services that the office was implementing, and there was also another funding for immigrants at the caring career, that we've helped get the word out. There was RFPs that came out from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, but something that the Office of New Americans did was also train some of the folks that were aspiring to become DOJ accredited reps, Department of Secretary rep. These are non-attorneys that could also do immigration work. Taken a pilot project where we trained 5 individuals, and of course they have to be based within nonprofits, and we hope to roll out more of those in the future. That's the legal services. Of course, the internal part, which is convening the interagency council, that also includes the ethnic councils, the African Heritage, the Council for Latino Affairs, and the Asian Pacific and Islander Council. Those are some of the ethnic councils. Those are the only ethnic councils that are established in the state right now, the 3 ethnic councils, and we have worked with them on a few fronts. And of course, convening that group itself and agencies sharing together some of the work that they're doing and some of the legislative work that they're championing was an amazing work that the office convened. In the credential and credit evaluation piece, that's a huge piece that we have had funding for. That my colleague who works at the Office of New Americans, Sonia Davis, the program manager there, has been leading that work with the Governor's Workforce Development Board. And they have now a partnership with the MINSQ system, Minnesota State and Colleges,
Okay.
And a few partners from the state like DHS, DLI, Office of Higher Education, bringing together a work group that is trying to set up the system for new Americans to get their foreign credentials evaluated, and sometimes if they don't have the credit, if they can test out or do the foreign
Okay.
credential evaluation. So that's
Okay.
the other piece that we've made some progress on.
Okay. Okay.
So those are a few of the examples of what we have done. There are certain
Yeah.
touchable
Sure.
programs that we've put out. The number of sessions we hosted, the number of people we have worked with. Um, there are other, recurring events that
Sure.
we do,
Sure. Sure.
like the monthly
Okay.
calls that we host,
Okay.
first Tuesdays of every month. We have not had one in this month, but
Okay.
we're hoping to have some more. This is an avenue for everyone to get together and work together in terms of
Okay.
just
Okay.
sharing the community the resources we have.
Okay. Well, folks, tonight we are shining the spotlight on the Minnesota, the Department of Employment and Economic Development. Very, very important agency for Minnesotans, for employees, for employers, for businesses. Very, very important agency. So tonight we have the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of New Americans. Commissioner Mohamed is here with us tonight. So you can contribute to the conversation by putting a comment in the chat if you have a question for the commissioner, or you can call our number 817-600-1525. But Commissioner Mohammed, right? My other question for you is, how if someone just moved to America and then to Minnesota specifically, how do they engage with, or how do they reach out to ONA, or is that a system set up that, hey, is that the person just come here, maybe they're having difficulty finding a job, how do they reach out to ONA?
They can reach out to us via our phone number or email.
Okay.
When you go to Deed New Americans, you have our information there. You can visit our website, reach out to us. But the office email is newamericans@state.mn.us. So newamericans@state.mn.us.
Okay.
One word, of course. And then you can always reach out to us by the phone number as well on our website. I think if I navigate from here, I might lose the video.
Sure, sure. Yeah. No problem. No problem.
I can share
We'll
with
provide
you.
those information. Yeah, we'll provide those information to the audience. But the reason I asked, right? I know you've been talking about partnership and partners. Are you working with like community-based organization, immigrant, like non-profits-based organization, right? To create that awareness. Hey, man, if someone come to America today and they are in Minnesota, we have these resources, we have this office that can help them, get on their feet. Are you guys working with local community immigrant-based organizations?
Yes, there's a lot of partners. I want to acknowledge my colleague, Dr. Akakpo,
Okay.
was joining us, but she's out sick, and
Yeah.
so I pass regards to all of you, and
Sure.
feel free to even ask any questions. But the reason why I bring that up is we have the employment and training programs
Mhm.
office that she leads, and that does a lot of partnerships with organizations that are seeking funds to help new Americans. And so they have a long list of partners that they work with. So for the new American, specifically the new American individual that wants to either start to look for a job or want to be matched with a job, they can either go to those partners, community
Mhm.
organizations that work with
Mhm.
us,
Mhm.
or they can go to a CareerForce location. There's one in North Minneapolis, there's one in South Minneapolis. There's 50 of them across the state, and they could walk into any of the CareerForce locations and work with an employment counselor that will help them find a job, write their resume, give them all the resources they need. Sometimes they do make referrals if the person needs, for example, language training or other external upscaling programs. And so that is a great connection for the new American. If you want to start your entrepreneurship program, the community development finance institutions that are working with deed. There is a long list of those in our website that you could walk into any, and then they will talk to you about the entrepreneurship opportunities they have and the kind of loans that they have for you. The
Yeah.
small business development centers, about 7 of them across the state. You could, in the metro area, I think that's the university, and they also in a website, but you can
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
check as well.
Yeah.
So if you are a new American that is and struggling to either find a job or work on their business, Deed has resources for you either through the partners or through directly reaching out to Deed. If you're having an issue finding those resources, please feel free to just reach out to us via email, newamericans@state.mn.us, and I'll make sure we connect you to the right person.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because the thing is, well, a lot of people in our community, especially in our immigrant communities, complain about resources are not coming back to our community. The information is not filtering back to our community. I know you're talking about these great programs, talking about your office, talking about all of the great programs G has, the loans, the grants. But especially like the northwest suburbs, where in like, as you know, right, in northwest suburbs, it has a huge immigrant population, from West Africa, and East Africa and all other places. Like, is there any like maybe like has ONA done any outreach in the northwest suburb, right, where you have a huge immigrant population?
In the northwest suburb, is the
Yeah,
northwest
yeah,
suburb.
yeah.
Yes, we did find we did a one session last year. We have a lot of partners in the northwest suburbs.
Okay,
Acer, for example,
okay,
uh, Sewa,
okay,
CAPI, some of the organizations that are in that area, and of course we do attend the events. We did the bus tour and the business corridor that Acer does that.
mm-hmm,
We have other smaller nonprofits that are getting some of the fundings.
mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, I think we had Sam, Fatherhood, I think,
Yeah, okay,
nonprofit. We have the organization of Liberian. Um,
okay. ONM, or Organization of Librarians in Minnesota. Okay,
yes, a few of those folks that year in year out, it might not be the same funding, but sometimes they have the connections necessary that they can help you find the resources you need, even if they don't have the funding. Our partners are amazing, and they can just point you to the right direction where you can get the resources. So it's not about just having the funds, but knowing the system and being there. So all the person need to do is just talk to any person who has a nonprofit that has been serving the community, and even if they don't have the right funding at that time, they will sure be sending you the right way. And so feel free to reach out. It's all about networking.
okay, okay. Right.
So
Well,
we
thank you
did
for that.
reach out to that. We had a few listening sessions. We have the Office of Public Engagement led
Okay,
by Ekta Prakash, who was a former CEO of CAPI,
okay,
that did a few other sessions. So even if owner was not necessarily doing the session or leading the session, Deed has done a lot of work in that area. Just recently, I think our CareerForce team, Ama's team, Dr. Ama, Deputy Commissioner Mark Majors, a few of the folks have done an amazing, soft launch for the CareerForce location there, where all the partners were in that area, in that suburb. So we've done a few outreach events,
okay,
mostly reaching out to our partners in the area.
okay. With the news Americans in Minnesota, you think where will you say where are they most concentrated? Right? Are they in the metro area? Are they spread out? are they spread out across the state? Where are the new Americans concentrated? Where will you say where are they most concentrated right now?
Yes, and I'm sorry, this is where now I would have referred to the data that I had, but in general, there's more concentration of new Americans in the metro area generally
Okay.
than in the rural areas, but also goes into the ethnic groups. For example, you have more, for example, in the Asian community, immigrant community, there's more percentage in the metro area than in the rural areas, and the Latino community has the bigger percentage of folks in the rural area than any other ethnic group.
Okay.
And the African community is kind of in the middle. So in general, there's about 50% of the folks live in the rural in the metro area, and the rest live in the rural areas. And you see a lot of the activities that are happening in some pockets of communities living in different regions.
Okay.
You have folks that are doing farming, folks that are working in some of the bigger corporations that are in the rural areas, the processing plants,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those places. And so you would see a huge number of immigrant communities around some of those places which have, where's high demand for jobs and some economic activity there than any other areas.
Okay. With the current environment we live in right now, right, with immigration crackdowns, there's so much negative energy towards immigrants. What is your office doing to combat, I mean, some of those negativity, or to encourage, new Americans here, man? Minnesota is here for you. The deed is here for you. D is still going to support you. How are you navigating the current environment, right? As I said, is that we live in an environment right now where, as I've said many times on this platform, that immigrants are under attack. And what is your office doing, for new Americans, and for the immigrant community in this environment that we currently live in?
No, thank you. That's a great question, and it's in everyone's mind. A few things. First, there's so many, federal related issues that as a state we cannot do anything about. For example, the immigration enforcements, some of the folks that are being rounded up. That is not something that the state is doing. As far as the response from Minnesota, this is not just an Office of New American issue. It's the whole state structure, the cities, the Attorney General's office, the governor's office. There are a few, you've seen in the headlines, everyone is doing their part. So the Attorney General is doing a lot of the legal related issues, joining hands with other states. The governor's office, does a lot of the policy and advocacy and lobby and, that kind of work with their federal partners. When it comes to Office of New Americans, what we have done so far is, sharing the resources, giving the immigration updates to our partners. This is what's happening. This is what's coming on. This is how it will affect you all. We've worked with for example, the Office for Immigration Affairs at the City of Minneapolis and the City of St. Paul. There's a few sessions that have been done for employers. What does it mean, for if ICE shows up at your location? What does it mean as an immigrant? What rights do you have? Knowing your rights. What are the legal resources that you could call? What are the nonprofits that are doing free legal services? Should you be afraid of the local police? Where should you feel comfortable? What are your rights again? So those are some of the information that we've put out with our partners, and not necessarily the Office of New Americans, but we've worked with a lot of the partners and supported some of the partners that we've done in our own sessions. The monthly forums that we do report out. We ask people for feedback. and then and guide them to the right resources. And so I know there's a lot of fear out there, but what we do also rely on the data that shows a lot of the folks that are in our system, in the workforce system, are immigrants, and they've been leading the job growth. So immigrants are also doing a lot more contribution than just economic contribution. There's the cultural aspect of it. There's the community aspect of it, the vital communities, the community vitality. Is something. Diversity is our strength, and that sort of information to show the policymakers that Minnesota's economic development relies in some part on the new American workforce. And so we're one of the states that have some of the lowest unemployment rates. And the state needs to sustain its economic development. And the number shows that a huge number of the workforce development has been led by new Americans. There's also the aspect of spending power of the immigrant communities. It's not just immigrants are not here to just take welfare. They have a spending power. They're working. They pay taxes, and they're raising their families. They're in the school system, in the healthcare system. You've seen a lot of the folks that are working in the caring career, the nurses, the caregivers. Most of them, are some of the folks that are new Americans, and so the economy depends on this. So we've been putting out those messaging out there, the right messaging that new Americans are not a liability to the state and to the nation as a whole. And so that's what we've been doing. Of course, we've also been convening the state agencies. We've been working internally to answer questions and help anybody who needs more resources, either the individual or the organization, to get them to the right direction.
Okay. What do you think, first of all, like how will you describe the current state of the economy? I know for all Minnesotans, but especially like for new Americans, for immigrants, how will you describe the current state of the economy for Minnesotans and for new immigrants and for the immigrant community?
That's a great question. Certainly more data may be needed to answer that fully, but I would say there's a lot more work that we could do to support some of the folks that are underserved. But on the other hand as well, we've rolled out major programs like the Drive for Five, and we've seen constantly that more new Americans are joining the in-demand, high-wage jobs than before. There's a huge number of businesses that are doing very successful, that are contracting with the state, that are serving their communities. Right now, you see, if you need any service from the state, there's community organizations somewhere that can give you the resources. We've put out more translations and interpretation out there for the community than before. We have so many economic empowerment programs, whether it's for the youth, for the justice involved, for the women, for the elderly. The programs out there, there's no lack of resources, and we've been focusing on getting the word out there. So as far as gauging, where the economic status of new Americans are, you look at the wage changes, for example, and there's certainly more people are in the higher bracket right now of new Americans than before. That's one of the ways you can see if there's any improvement in the economic status of new Americans. This doesn't mean there's not more people who are in the lower scale of things. But that's why we have programs. Those work doesn't end there. So generally, it's not a par with the for example, the average for the state. One thing that will come into mind is the unemployment rate, for example. The last time we did a disintegrated data, even though the unemployment rate for the state was about 3%, when you look at the African American or the Latino or the Asian communities, especially the immigrants, you would see a higher percentage, up to 7% unemployment rate. And so there is some disparity out there. That's what I meant, certainly we're not there yet. So we need more work to do on that front, addressing those gaps, but also not ignoring the fact that more folks are now on the earning higher than they were before. They've taken advantage of the upskilling programs. They have started the entrepreneurship efforts. They got loans. The number of applicants for the loans has suddenly increased from the immigrant communities because of the awareness of the resources we have. So there's always pros and cons, and I think it's a healthy thing to do when you have more folks that are in the upper scale, and also you have more work to do elevating everyone, and no one is left behind as per the mission.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the disparity, right? I know sometimes we hear like you always say Minnesota is a great state to live, great state to raise family, job prospect here is always good. But with persona, when you look at that, when you look at those online data, you talk about the disparity, right? Especially for new Americans or for the minority population. Sometimes, right, that the unemployment rate is higher. What is D doing to address those specific, concerns as it relates to the immigrant community, to the minority community?
Yes, this is a great question. We have a few programs that address those, starting with our partners, but also our partners need the support from the state to help the communities, and that's why we have the Drive for 5 programs, the Pathways to Prosperity, the youth at work programs, the services, the support services, grants. These are programs that are meant to, address some of the gaps we have. We also look at, rural Minnesota versus, Twin Cities area or the metro area. And some of the data that we find from there, that the labor market information does inform some of the programs or where we put the money in. And so DEED is using its granting and RFP programs to address some of those disparities where we can invest money in. You've seen a lot of the funding that came from the 2023 session when we had the surplus. You've seen a lot of direct appropriations that the legislator has done that was also being implemented by DEED and working with the community organizations that got the funding. And there's so many opportunities for folks to address those disparities. But as I said, the work needs to be continued, sustained. At some point, it doesn't just stop there. So what DEED is doing is mostly getting the programs out there, the funding and the partnership with hard to reach and underserved communities across the state.
How does Minnesota compare, right, in terms of the work DEED is doing compared to other states? I mean, like maybe even our neighboring states like North Dakota, South Dakota, or maybe like other states. How does Minnesota compare in terms of the work your agency is doing and the department is doing?
Fairly well, I would say. There are some data that we are above average for the nation, and there's some that we need to do more work. It does show that, for example, as the best state to raise a kid. There are places that are the health level or the happiness level at some states. Minnesota is leading. Unemployment rate is low. That means that a lot more people are working or in the workforce. Very active labor force. I would say it's one of the top 5 states to start a business. And you know, the success rate for the businesses is high in Minnesota than most of other states. As they say, you know, more than 80-90% of the businesses fall within the first 1 year. When they look at those.
Okay. Well, folks, tonight we are shining a spotlight on the Department of Employment and Economic Development, Minnesota, and we have the commissioner, the assistant commissioner of the Office of New Americans, Commissioner Abdiwahab Mohamed. He's here with us. If you're just joining us, the conversation has been going on for almost an hour, and thank you so much for joining us. It is the Inner Circle podcast. So it has been a great conversation. The commissioner is giving us some great education about the Office of New American is doing, the work Deed is doing. So we are so glad to have him here, right? As here in our Circle podcast, we try to bring awareness, education back to the community, because some of the things the commissioner is talking about, right, is like I'm just hearing about the Office of New Americans, right? I have not really heard about the Office of New Americans. My first time hearing it tonight. Commissioner, there was a little bit of glitch there, but thanks. Now I'm glad that you are back, you know, and stuff like that. But I was just telling folks where I said the information you are providing tonight, great information, great education, good awareness is like, you know, trying to bring resources, you know, awareness back to our community is great to see that. And here at Inner Circle Podcast, we are so glad to have you here tonight. As we said, this is a 1 hour show, and we are almost at the top of the hour. So as we try to, you know, wrap the up in the next 9 to 10 minutes, right? How will you describe, right, like the work your office is doing, like maybe for the next 5 years? What do you hope, right, like ONA will look like? What would the Office of New Americans achieve for, you know, for the immigrant community? How will you, I mean, what's your vision maybe for the next 5 years?
Great question again. I love those questions because it does show some of the things that we're enthusiastic about. Of course, expanding the office currently, it's the two of us here. Luckily, we have the resources and the help from our colleagues at DEED, especially the workforce development team in general, under the leadership of Deputy Commissioner Mark Majors, but also the whole DEED agency as a whole under Commissioner Verlek, the governor's office, the whole interagency council that advises the office and supports the office in general, and of course from our community partners. So I would love to see the office expand. We're thinking of getting more resources to the community, more regional centers. In the next 5 years, we're looking at expanding the work that we do. We also want to increase our partnership with other states. Currently, we do work with a network of about 20 states that we share resources, best practices, and so we would love to see Minnesota as a top state in the nation in terms of economic development for all. At times when there's a tricky situation in terms of the immigration and immigrant and refugee policies, we would love to see as serving more new Americans, showcasing that diversity is our strength. It's not a weakness, and of course rolling out more programs. Of course, we will leverage the resources and the funding we have, which is always something that we're seeking. We would love to have more partners, so we welcome anybody who wants to reach out to us, partner with the office, get the word out there like what you've done right now. I really appreciate, the more people we can reach, the more information is really key to economic development. The more you can do for yourself and your family. And so we'd love to have more partners, more resources if we do get the resources. Currently, we don't have grants that are coming out of the Office of New Americans. We will have to roll out some of those depending on funding. We'll have to roll out more funding for the community organizations. That is something that I'm hoping in the future the office will tackle. And in general, having more community advocates. There are things that I'm still working on, including, having a community-led initiatives
Okay.
like, advisory councils,
Okay.
folks that can advise the office from the community level. Those are all part of the pipeline, and I might not say this will happen tomorrow or the next
Yeah.
tomorrow, but
Yeah.
since you asked, these are great initiatives that we've had from the community when we did our outreach. Last summer, we did start our outreach. We went to, I think, St. Cloud, Wilmer,
Okay.
Worthington, Duluth, Moorhead area. And that's what we heard from the people, folks saying, we need the office to be more closer to the communities.
Okay.
And so all that I've mentioned is some of the what we had from the community,
Okay.
more resources, more information sharing, more partnerships, establish those advisory committees from different regions that can advise the office on some of the barriers that the communities are facing. And so that is what informs our vision
Okay.
mission for the next few years.
Okay. What keeps you grounded with the kind of work you do, right? You deal with, I think you have a lot on your plate. But what keeps you grounded? What keeps you going? What keeps you motivated, right? What keeps you grounded?
It is the partners that we have. They do the work sometimes with limited resources or no resources at all, and they will not stop doing the work for the community, and that really does, uh, you know, give me the courage to continue. As you may have seen, most of the challenges that you will hear is lack of resources, lack of resources, lack of resources. And so when you see, partners that are doing the work and amazing work and calling the office and saying this and this need to be done, or we need to connect this person to someone who can help him. Those are the kind of acts that you see that folks doing the work, not to get anything from it, but to do what's right
Okay.
for folks that are new to the country. So that really gives us the energy to continue the work that we do.
Okay. Well, I mean, thanks for sharing that. And then
I mean,
also,
including you, you've been doing all this podcast. Have you ever got a grant from the state?
it happened, who knows, right? We haven't, I mean, we haven't gotten there yet, but hey, who knows?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. But
and the work continues.
yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. Outside of work, what do you do? So what does Commissioner Mohammed do outside of work? Family, things like that.
Well, there's a lot of on my weekends. I still do work, so the
Okay,
work doesn't stop. I do attend a lot of community events.
okay,
And when I say communities, it's the whole immigrant communities.
yeah,
Today we're having the New Year, the Asian New Year, and the
okay,
next day we have an African event. Tomorrow we have a Latin event. So we have a lot of work that we do outside work,
okay,
weekends, later night, and so that takes a lot of work
okay,
time from me.
okay,
But I
okay,
do spend time with my small family, and
okay,
I do volunteer
okay,
on the weekends as well at some of the local weekend schools. I love teaching, and so if I was not working for the state, I'll probably be a teacher
okay, okay.
somewhere.
That's great. That's good.
And
That's good. That's
so
good.
informing the next generation about what they need to do and the kind of leaders we need coming from the community. So
Yeah,
do reach out if you have some of those circles that you
yeah,
might have come, and any mentorship programs you have. I
sure.
would love to be there.
Okay, definitely. And then also lastly, then two more questions just for you before we wrap. What do you hope your legacy to be, right? Once you is like this, I mean, this office seems like your baby, right? Is that you help to create it, you help to fund it, you help to bring it to to legislative fruition. What do you hope your legacy to be like?
Thank you. Since this office focuses mostly on policy and and systemic change, that takes generations sometimes to do one systemic. I mean, for example, you've seen the driver license for all.
Yeah,
20 years. Took 20 years for folks to get that across the finish line. But
sure.
that is one major, you know, change in policy at this state, that a lot of folks have now taken advantage of. Folks could go to work, folks could get their kids to school or to hospital if they have an emergency. And so what I really hope is to get more of those policy changes across the finish line,
Okay.
that we can say, we championed as part of a community, and the office was convening folks
Sure.
because we cannot do anything alone. But under the leadership office, we did ABCD that was
Sure.
systemic change and taking out some of the barriers. So that will be a great legacy.
Okay.
Hopefully, we'll get there. We live for that.
That's good.
Uh,
That's good. That's good.
uh,
That's good.
we,
That's
we
good.
don't make policies, but we can champion
Yeah.
policies and
Yeah.
and and
Well,
and, and have
Commissioner, it's been a great conversation tonight. We thank you so much for joining the Inner Circle podcast. We're here to amplify, empower, and elevate the immigrant voices, and it seems like you are doing that well for our community, and we really, really appreciate you for that. But as we wrap here, right, as we end the night here tonight, what's the message you want to leave with the community, right? What's the message? What's your party message for the community tonight?
That's a loaded question. I think
I'm not
if
trying to
I
say
could
you about
choose
anything,
one,
just yeah,
if I could choose one, is get on the networks that you have, so
mm,
you can get the information you need. Information is key.
yeah,
Sometimes you might not find someone who gives you a resource, but shares an information with you, and then leaves up to you to do with whatever you want to do with that message.
okay,
And so there's, I always say, there's a lot of resources out there.
yeah,
And so widen your network and your circle. A lot
hmm,
of the problems we have as an immigrant community is that you stick with the circle.
yeah,
The
yeah,
podcast is called Inner Circle.
yeah, yeah,
A wider circle is always
yeah,
great.
yeah. That's a good one. Yeah,
But
yeah,
it is, the more you and you've seen this either in the
yeah,
US, information is power. The more
sure, yeah,
information you have, the more you can do. So widen your network and get on as much information as you can, and you will find something that's very helpful for you.
well, that's a great gem right there. That's a great message. Definitely, I really, really appreciate that. And we'll do our part here, right, to try to get the information out to the community. But again, Commissioner, I'm so grateful that you could join us tonight. We hope you can become a partner with us, right, to kind of keep getting those message to the community, keep getting that information to the community. But it's been a great conversation. It's been an education for me as well, and we hope you can make this your home, right? Whenever you want to get a message out, right? This can be your home. We can reach out to you and you can come and share those information. And we here in a Circle Podcast wishing ONA all the best. We wish you all the best. You are doing good work. Really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate. If I was going to leave with one thing,
Mhm.
to keep the connection going, we
Sure.
do host our a monthly forum every
Yeah.
first Tuesday from 3 to 4:30.
Okay.
That is a great place to join, to know the latest grants, the latest resources, what is
Okay.
out there, how
Okay.
can you take advantage of, and hear directly from the folks that are giving these resources to the community. So do join us every first Tuesday of the month, and we would love to have you there as well. And I would be happy to come back and get more information and bring more of my colleagues next time.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you so much, Commissioner. And with that, folks, that concludes the end of our show tonight. You all have a good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night, folks.
We rise for the